Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome to SPSM Chat 3.0, the one, the only. My name is Rudy Caseres. This is the last SPSM Chat 3.0 of this decade. Not ever, mind you. We have a lot left in the tank. Our topic today, bipolar and suicide, is quite a doozy. I'm bipolar, so I should have more than a few sentences to say this week. Our guest, Heather Funk Palacios, is going to talk about her story as well. And before we get into the swing of things, if you're watching this live, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Mixer, please let us know that you're here. Let us know that you care. Leave a comment. We're going to have a Twitter chat today, but if you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Mixer, don't worry. We ask you all the same questions, and you can participate as well all the same. There is no second-class citizens, no matter what platform on SPSM Chat. So let us know you're here. Join the conversation, whether you're bipolar or not, whether you're a suicide survivor or not. This is the place to be. If it's Sunday, it's SPSM Chat, except for next Sunday. So let's go around the table. First and as most, Joelle.
Hi, my name is Joelle Marie Nurse. I'm a peer specialist and I have personal experience with suicide. I've been diagnosed bipolar. The diagnosis of bipolar and related experiences have definitely been significant in my mental health and caused significant distress, and also have played a major part in encountering and coping with suicidal experiences. So,
Danielle.
Had to unmute myself. Hi guys, I'm Danielle. I currently work as a child and family therapist on the East Coast, working on my second master's in alcohol and substance abuse counseling and applying for my doctorate next year in clinical psychology. I am not diagnosed bipolar, but a lot of my very close friends are bipolar, so I have experience through being support to them. And I am both an attempt and lost survivor of suicide.
Honestly, Danielle, we all have our suspicions. So if you want to come out as bipolar tonight on SPSM Chat.
I did ask my therapist recently, and he said, no, I just have very, very complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, what does your doctor know? We know you better than your doctor. Without further ado, tell the whole world, the whole SPSM Chat universe, who is Heather Funk Palacios?
Hi. You said my name right. Well done. I can't even pronounce it right after 20 years of marriage. Yes, my name is Heather Michelle Funk Palacios, and I am currently a pastor's wife at a church in South Florida, Church by the Glades. And I am on staff part-time at the church because I spend the other half of the time traveling around and speaking. I think the reason I have found myself in this conversation is my story is pretty unorthodox. And so, because of its unusuality, if that's a word, sometimes I get invited to talk.
So before we get into our traditional chat, we have 4 questions, one every 10 minutes that we devote to. Before we get into that in just a few short minutes, tell everyone, I don't need to go through the whole Galaxy Universe thing, but tell a little bit about your backstory, Heather.
Okay. It started when I was 8 years old on 254 South College Drive, Bowling Green, Ohio, 43402. And I'm 46, so that was a long time ago. But at 8 years old, I went up to my bedroom and I wrote a letter and I mailed it to my grandparents. And the essence of the letter was a suicide letter. And so my mom and dad were made aware of that from my grandparents, and they called the church and somebody came over and kind of just talked to me. And then we just moved on from the incident, because back then there wasn't movements and hashtags and chats like this. There really was no awareness about it. So they did the best they could. And then when I was 13 going on 14, we moved from Ohio to Chicago, which is, a pretty ordinary thing for a kid. But once again, it just derailed me. And so I wrote a 5-page suicide letter, went into the kitchen, put it on the counter. I was getting ready to take my life when the doorbell rang. And straight up, I'm lying, I'm dying. It was the Orkin bug man. And he needed to get into the house to spray for bugs. And I was like, yo, the timing, come on. But nonetheless, let him in. And by the time he was done doing what he needed to do, my family had returned. And it just kind of threw off the plan. Interesting factoid, though, is a couple months ago, I found that suicide letter as a 13-year-old girl. It's pretty dilapidated, but nonetheless, I have it. I don't have the heart yet to read it because I have a 14-year-old at home. So I don't know. And then just fast forward from that, I was in college now, around 20 years old, dating a guy. I've been dating him for about half a decade, and he wouldn't put a ring on it. And it was just a real merry-go-round relationship. And I just flipped one day, and I said, I just don't want to live with this. I'm going to die. So took a bottle of pills and tried to kill myself, but I was able to be kept alive. And then the last one in this interesting saga is when I was married for 1 year to a pastor. On July 30th, 2000, I just woke up with the realization that I was undiagnosed, unprescribed, unaided, but now locked into this pastor wife role. And I knew I was crazy. I mean, I knew there was something wrong in my mind that was crazy. And I couldn't back out of the marriage because we had been married for a year. And, for us, it was moral that we stay in the marriage. So I decided I was going to kill myself. And I drove to a liquor store and I consumed a lot of alcohol in the car and proceeded to start taking my life in the car in the parking lot when I called my husband because I didn't want him to think it was his fault. And I had written a letter. And I was talking to him on the phone while I was taking my life in the car. And he was able to keep me on the phone long enough to determine my location. And when he got there, he was unable to stop me. So he called 911 and 6 first responders were unable to stop me. There was just a rage, a rabid dog mentality that nobody was going to stop me this time. So they had to tranquilize me and they knocked me out cold, took me to the hospital, treated my injuries. And in the state of Florida, they have an act called the Baker Act, which says that if you're a threat to yourself or society, they can lock you up for 72 hours. And I needed to be locked up because I didn't want to live. And so that's where I needed to go. And so they took me there and it was very demoralizing. I mean, I had vomit on me, urine on me, throw up on me, a shoe missing. They threw me in the back of a white van. 2 men drove me to the psych ward. They brought me inside and there wasn't a room. So they put me in my wheelchair up against the wall, threw a sheet over me and left me there. And just so not good for people that were in my position. Nonetheless, they put me in a room by myself because of the danger I exhibited in the parking lot, locked me in. And I just remember lying there that night on July 30th, 2000 as a pastor's wife that sucked at trying to die, that I was just so mad at God. And I'm a person of faith. I'm not here to push my religion on faith on anybody. So don't email me or sue me. It's just my story. I got to stick to it. But after just going off on God, I finally just surrendered to that. This is it. I got to do something. And so I just said, God, if you can help me get out of here, I'll dedicate the rest of my life to helping people not end up here. And that was 20 years ago. And I have tried to own up to my end of the bargain.
Well, I'm glad you're here because that would have sucked finding a guest for this week. I'll have you know, going off on God was the original name of SPSM Chat. So,
wow.
No, I'm just kidding. That would be awful. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into our first question because I know we're going to get really into the weeds. So, question number 1. Is bipolar a disorder, an identity, or both? Before we get into that, I want to make sure that I give shout outs to people that are on social media, but also on Twitter. So, hey, Zach, how you doing? Hey, Nicholas. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Allie. Hey, Zach. Other Zach. Hey, okay. So let's go on to the Twitter chat. What is the bigger one? This one. There we go. No, that one. Okay. So, let's see who is. Do I have to refresh this thing? Okay. So, thank you to. Oh, okay, Anya. Awesome. Here we go. We're getting in the swing of things. Hey Amber, how you doing? Hey Katie, who was our guest last Sundays, is a clinical psychologist and big fan of SPSM. I'm here because this topic is really important to me, and I want to hear your perspectives on it. I'm so glad you're here, Katie. I thought you were just participating because you wanted to be noticed to be a guest on the show. So glad you're back. I kid. So the way it works is this: we have four questions, and if you're on Twitter, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, feel free to leave a comment, leave a tweet. Make sure if you're on Twitter to use the hashtag SPSM, and also if you're replying to question one, just put a one or just reply to the main tweet, the one with the graphic, obviously. So before I I'm totally rambling this week. I need a break. I tell you, I need a break so bad. So I look great this week, though, so that's good. Heather, let's get with you.
Okay, with what?
Is bipolar a disorder, an identity, or both?
Because I'm a patient with that diagnosis and not a professional, I actually would feel better if I deferred to, the rest of the panel. I don't know. Am I allowed to do that? I don't even know.
Well, see, the thing is that this is your personal opinion. I think people understand that you're not a clinician.
Okay.
So, from your personal lived experience, the opinion of only Heather Funk Palacios and no one else, what say you to that?
Okay, great. Thank you. For myself personally, and I want to preface that, I believe it's a disorder. I do not believe it's an identity. I believe that my identity was determined before I was even born, God's kid, and nothing's going to change that. And I don't really delineate between the disorder of bipolarity or the disorder of asthma in the lungs or diabetes in the liver or kidney, wherever they occur, or a venereal disease in the private parts, or, So no, it does not. For me personally, it's not an identity.
So, I mean, like, that begs the question: if you can just wave a magic wand, would you still be bipolar?
Oh no, not at all. No, please. I mean, God, take this cup from me. It's like, ugh, I hate it. But because this is weird. Like, I feel like somebody's gonna get so ticked off at what I'm saying. Please don't get mad at me, people. But I'm a person of faith, and so I'm always praying, God, come on, man, restore my brain. But until he does, or if he chooses not to, because he's God, I'm not, I just try to be a good steward with the bipolarity. And just like if I was a quadriplegic, I would try to be a good steward with that disability,
Yeah, and don't worry, Heather. Like, on SPSM Chat, we make people uncomfortable, okay? We say things that not everyone wants to hear all the time, but damn it, we got to have these conversations.
No, I don't. I'm like a people pleaser, so I've got like urine coming down my leg right now. I'm so freaking nervous about this.
Okay, so on that note, let's hear from Joelle.
Hi, sorry, the dog's being a little crazy. So, is bipolar? Sorry, I wanted to look at the question again. It helps me. Is bipolar disorder a disorder, an identity, or both? First of all, that's not a simple question. When there's, the debate between, is it a disorder, an identity, is it something else, is it both? I think it depends on what arena you're discussing the topic, because it's never really the same discussion depending on where you're talking about it. I'm talking about it here. I think that it has definitely shaped who I am because of the experiences I have through it. It can change the reality that I experience. It can change the environment that I perceive and that I then engage with. And so it's part of my identity. It may not be my whole identity, but it's absolutely part of my identity. Is it a disorder? Well, it is a disorder in that it can affect my normal functioning. I can tell when I'm having issues because of bipolar. I don't think it is necessarily a disorder in that there is something wrong with me inherently because someone else has called me this thing. I think that, bipolar is also often misdiagnosed because of people who have experienced trauma, who have had other issues, who maybe have ADHD. It ultimately is a disorder, I think, because we are not able to learn coping mechanisms for how we function. That's my answer.
So, if I can play devil's advocate here, you say you're bipolar, you say you're autistic. Why are you not OCD?
OCD is specifically ego dystonic. So one of the really shitty features of OCD is that it convinces you that you are these things that you hold yourself not to be. And the constant question is, what if? What if I want to harm someone? What if I do these things that are not responsible, that ultimately result in tragedy? What if I am lying, but I hold myself to be a very honest person? One of the defining factors of thinking that makes it OCD is that is ego dystonic. It is not at all like myself. And that is what is so troubling, that it won't get out of my head, that these thoughts are trying to convince me that they are OCD, that they are me, but they're not. And that's why it can be such a crisis.
Danielle?
Sorry, I was muted. So is it an identity or a disorder? I have the clinician's perspective, I guess. To me, I do not like when people become defined by their diagnosis. I do have a lot of clients and people I've worked with in the past who are like, well, I'm bipolar, so, I do this and I do that. And I feel like a lot of people kind of try to use their diagnosis to give an excuse for the reason why they do certain things that they do that may not be necessarily appropriate or acceptable. I think that bipolar is a fascinating thing to me, which is why I'm going to try and focus all of my research on it at the doctorate. But I do know and have been in contact with a lot of people who do allow themselves to be defined, so therefore it becomes their identity. So I think it's kind of an individual question, and it's better to be coming from someone who is diagnosed with bipolar rather than me, because I will sit there and tell the person that I'm working with, as their therapist, this is just something that you have. This is not who you are. I do that with all types of diagnosis. I have a lot of clients that I work with, major depressive disorder. I have major depressive disorder on top of PTSD. And, even I myself sometimes get caught up by the labels. And I think it's important to, like Joelle said, it's all about the coping skills and what you do with what you have. And I just don't like to see it be made as into an excuse the way I've seen it. So I look at it more of as a disorder.
Now, let me ask you, Danielle, has there ever been a time where you noticed in my behavior that I was acting quote unquote bipolar?
Literally never. Except for the other day when you came into my live video and were putting hearts and sad faces. No, I'm just kidding.
I always do
Um,
that.
but no, that's the thing, is that a lot of people, okay, like, one thing that like really pisses me off, the weather's hot, then it's cold. Oh my God, it's so bipolar. I hate when people associate labels to things like that. It really pisses me off. And there are people who are just generally, uppity, and why do they have to be manic? When there's a lot of people who come out that I see on social media who are talking about these disorders with literally no experience, no education, and are spewing these things. And I think it's really damaging to the people who actually do have these diagnoses, because it's stigmatizing, and um, it makes it so that people in their lives have the wrong information and don't support them properly. I've never seen you act bipolar, whatever that means to you. I don't know what your tells are for when you're manic or for when you're depressed. I just know that you're a good person, and I would love you no matter what state you are in.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's just I haven't had either or like a serious manic episode or depressive episode in so long as that I don't even feel like I feel like that was a past life, which is weird because there's nothing in the universe that says that it won't happen again. It most likely will. I'd be shocked if it never happened again, like it just completely disappeared. So I often wonder about that. Like, do I lose my bipolar credibility? Like, do I have to hand in my license or something like that? I don't know. It's weird. I wrote an article once for the Mighties called "I'm Bipolar and I Don't Want to Be Cured," but it's like like the number one, like the two criticisms I got for that were one, I'm writing it because I'm manic. And two, I'm not really bipolar, because if I was really bipolar, I would want to be cured in an instant. Well, it is kind of weird because maybe like definitely when I if in the darkest days of my life, I would not have wrote that. I would have been like, give me the magic pill right now. I need it. So it's weird because I'm feeling better that I don't want to be cured, but is that because that I've done all the right things in my life where I can still like be Rudy, be bipolar, and be okay with it, be at peace with it. And we'll kind of get to that in subsequent questions, but it's something I've been really mulling over. Am I better because I've become more accepting of who I am and bipolar being a part of that? Or am I better just because I'm not bipolar anymore?
Rudy,
Question mark?
I think you're just an awesome person, and that's just something you can't avoid. Like your diagnosis is irrelevant. You're just an awesome person. And if people want to criticize you for, waving your awesome flag out loud, let them do that. It's you've accepted who you are. You know it could come back. You know how to cope with it because you've been there before. That's how I feel when I know I'm slinking into a depressive episode. So I don't know. Do you? Doesn't matter. If you don't feel it, then whatever. It's okay.
Okay, fine. So, um, oh, you had something to say, Heather?
No, I'm laughing.
That's totally fine. Before we get into questions, I do see you, Kevix Marks. Kevix has some great questions and everything. Let me get to those at the end because we're already like got to get into question number two. But just know, stick with us, Kevix. We will get to you. If you're on Facebook, we see you. Don't worry. If you're on Periscope, we see you as well. So I appreciate your comments, Zach, Keishan, and Rosie. I see you as well. So hang in there. Question number two, and that would be, what are some factors that might lead to someone with bipolar dying by suicide? Let's go back to Heather.
Oh, well, again, please, I'm only speaking from my experience. But I do dance with the devil of suicide often. And I've recognized that about myself. And so I stay very close to my psychologist, my psychiatrist, my pastor, and my prescription. 4 P's. See what I did there? And I do that because I need that safety net around me. Left to my own devices on a dark day in my mind will start to go there. And I will start to, hear the thoughts in my head that my husband could you find a better woman than me. My kids could find a better mom than me. What I do for a calling on my life could be done by somebody else more qualified. And on a dark day in the valley in my head, when I start to entertain those thoughts, then I start to believe them. Then I start to find an action plan for them. Well, then I'll just take myself out, and I could do either this, or this. So I just have to have that safety net around me of those 4 P's that I had mentioned before.
Danielle?
Oh, I keep muting myself and forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry. So again, I apologize that I'm coming at this from like a clinical angle here, but to me, I think some of the risk factors, it's environmental and it's history. So, if someone with bipolar disorder happens to be using more substances, drinking more, smoking more pot, whatever, I do think that could play a big impact at increasing the risk. I think that it is also about the social support. So if you have people who don't understand and don't know how to support you, which a lot of people don't properly, I think that increases. And then there's also, the history of whether or not people have attempted in the past, because, across all mental health diagnoses, I do think that is a big factor that sometimes is overlooked. I know because I've had, 5 or 6 attempts of my own. To this day, I'm highly functioning. I'm still considered a high risk for suicide due to my history. So those are some of the contributing factors. And I also think it's also dependent on, you know, which end of the spectrum that you're on. You know, if you're in a really depressive state and your depressive episodes are really, really, really low, obviously that increases the risk. But I also think the ups, there's a lot of impulsive behavior that happens. And it could be something that wasn't necessarily planned, but something that was impulsive. So that's my contribution to this question.
You back, Joelle? Okay, so let's put in the question up again. So, what are some factors that might lead to someone with bipolar dying by suicide?
Um, some factors that could lead to it are, definitely the distress that comes from the experiences and symptoms themselves that get you the diagnosis of bipolar. Um, so those feelings that are created, but also how people around you react to what you're going through, that can be incredibly stressful and traumatic. So the trauma of just trying to navigate life and navigate going through those feelings can be incredibly distressful and just incredibly alienating and frustrating. And you can feel alone. You can feel like a terrible person. And also, honestly, psychiatry is more art than science. And so though there are typical medications for bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 or people who have more of a certain kind of depressive episode, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's ultimately guesswork when it comes to it. So you may go through 3, 5, 7, a million medications before you get to something that works or something that you're thinking that works, but it's really just dulling you. And some side effects of those medications could be an increase in frustration, an increase in aggravation, an increase in mania, an increase in suicidal thoughts. And again, like I said before, there are definitely times when people are diagnosed as having bipolar, but it's really other things. And if you're not getting the right treatment, it can make things worse. And that was my case for a long time, that yes, I have bipolar, this thing we call bipolar, but I also have OCD, and that was missed for a very, very long time. And that led to some very destructive, awful things for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's also very complicated. Like me being suicidal, I, I mean, for me, that was just more of, and we'll get into the mania versus depressive thing. But for me, it was mostly depression. Like I never was suicidal because I was manic, but I certainly was very much so immediately after the crash because I had all these grandiose thoughts. And then when I had that crash, it's like, oh no, I'm a huge fraud. And like, I thought I was the greatest thing that ever happened to man, and I'm just a loser instead. Why am I even alive? I mean, that's my perspective. And like I said, don't worry too much, Heather. We're all just speaking for ourselves. Everyone else in the Twitter chat is speaking only for themselves as well, not for their employers, organizations, or what have you. Speaking of the Twitter chat, let's get back to them. Let's see if we have any new people in here. There we go. Just has to refresh. Hey, Katie, into question number 2, which is the question that we're talking about right now, says not being able to access effective treatment not bringing relief from emotional pain, and that leading to hopelessness. Hashtag SPSM. Amber says she has 4 Ps and needs the P. I don't even want to play that GIF, so we'll just leave it at that. So, hey, Krista, who's also producing us, makes us look so nice. Introducing herself again. I'm Krista. I'm studying human services and psychology at SC University and writer advocate with lived experience. I'm also the producer for SPSM Chat, so I don't do a ton of tweeting during the stream. Anya says there are so many factors: depression, features, suicidal thinking, mixed states. Even if the automatic assumption may be that the actual bipolar symptoms are the biggest issue, some people say that stigma, people's reactions can be even worse than the disorder at times. Oh, hey. Oh, Michelle, right on top of things, shared my article. Like, I didn't even cue that one up. So, Amber says, I can joke about that, though. So, where's the line between joking and being serious? You walk straight up to that line, Amber. This is SPSM chat, okay? We're not playing around
Sometimes
here.
it's the same thing.
Yes. Okay. I will reel you back, Amber, when you've crossed the line. Okay. How about that? That is our deal. Amber says, I have a broken arm. I am not a broken arm. Well, hopefully. So let's get on to question number three. All right, we're right on time. Question number three. How does suicidality manifest differently between depression and mania? Who was that laughing? You're first. Is that you, Heather? Okay, so there we go.
No, it wasn't me this time. But it wasn't me this time.
So I don't care. Go.
Oh, okay. All right. You're the boss. Whatever. Okay. How does suicide manifest differently? Okay. Can I say this one more time? I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I said that yet. Well, for me, I actually read an amazing book called First Rate Madness. And it was about some real globally renowned leaders, Martin Luther King and Gandhi, JFK, Abraham Lincoln, who were bipolar or they had some degree of mental illness. But yeah, I mean, they're like amazing people, heroic status. And it was so good because I really identified with a lot of stuff that they were saying. So to answer that question, when I'm like, medic, I'm not thinking about dying. I'm thinking about, who can I make laugh? Who can I bring joy to? Who can I give encouragement to? Who can I cheer for? It's the other side of the coin where I will, like I said earlier, dance with the devil of wanting to die.
Joelle?
Sorry. She's having a rough night.
Is that a bipolar puppy?
It is bipolar puppy.
Okay. Came to the right town.
What are some factors that might lead to someone with bipolar dying by suicide? That's number 2. Okay, we're on number 3. Sorry. Aren't we on number 3?
Yeah, we're on number 3.
Oh, okay. I just saw the wrong question. Okay.
No worries.
Suicidality manifests differently between depression and mania. It just helps me to read it. So I definitely think in depression, it is, for me, it's been, it's been driven more by, feeling like I'm worthless or guilt or things like that. Or even just a feeling of slowly just not caring more and more about less and less things, even about myself. And so like neglecting to take care of myself to the point where maybe it just makes sense to let go. Whereas mania, I've had like a very, very bad dysphoric mania, which is, all the shitty feelings of depression plus all the energy of mania. And that was very, very brutal. It can feel extremely physical and for that, it was, the idea of wanting to die was more an escape from the really brutal, fast, strong feelings of that moment and not of what it was like being trapped in my head for so long. So I think it can feel very different and it can look very different. And for mania, it can look like anger, and in depression, it can look like despondency.
How does it look like in anime?
It looks like a puppy.
I was asking anime, but that's okay. What say you, Danielle?
Oh, I love your dog so much. So, again, I'm going to be just putting my own disclaimer, just to jump off the disclaimers here, is that I'm not bipolar, so I'm speaking about people that I've worked with, my friends. I've actually seen a handful of people become highly suicidal in manic states, which I know is not necessarily what people would expect. And it was due to the fact that they were anticipating the crash and the depression, that they were all like, even as they were, Danielle's not coming out as bipolar tonight. I'm sorry, as much as you want me to be a bipolar bear, I don't have it. But I have seen that in anticipation of the crash and knowing that the depression comes back, it actually brings them to, be even more suicidal than they typically would. So I've seen that happen. And I've also seen people accidentally do things, like I said, I think in the last question, or maybe it was the first question, there's a lot of impulsive behaviors that sometimes happen when people are in a state of mania. So sometimes they do things that they don't necessarily plan on doing that become, suicide attempts. But as someone with major depression and having my own suicide attempts, I mean, the level of despair that I have felt in the past, and people I know with depression and bipolar depression, the lows, it's so easy to get to that place because you just completely lose joy in life. You don't want to shower, you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to, some people like full on can't function. I've only had one period of depression like that, thankfully, but I know people who, are so debilitated by their depression that they can't work, they can't finish school, they can't carry out relationships because it's hard for them to even, brush their teeth every day. And so I think that suicide factors into that because it's the weight of the depression, the feeling of that pain that you carry, and knowing that it could come back, knowing that it could happen again. And sometimes you are on medication. If you are lucky enough to be able to receive treatment, the medication can make you feel worse. That's part of the reason that I don't take medication myself to this day for my depression. It's because it did increase my suicidal ideation. So I think that that's something that factors into it too, is that these wonderful pills that are supposed to cure could actually make things a lot worse for people.
Jackie Christmas brings up an interesting point on Periscope. Says mania may cause high risk behavior that can result in death. And that's interesting. So let me ask all of you, why not? We're doing it. So if someone is engaging in risky behavior, whether it be, I guess, drunken driving or potentially sleeping with the wrong person, ending up with HIV, something like that, is that considered suicidal behavior?
Not in my opinion, because I don't think you have to have bipolar disorder, OCD, anxiety, depression, PTSD to engage in those risky behaviors. You're just with a bipolar diagnosis, you're just an increased risk for that kind of stuff. And like I said, people do take advantage of, the label to make excuses for their behavior, which I personally don't, as a friend or as a clinician, appreciate. Because I know people who have done stuff like, I'm not breaking any HIPAA laws here, but there are people I've worked with in the past who've done stuff like prostitution, and they're not bipolar. So why would you have to attribute that kind of stuff to that? I don't know.
Anyone else have any takes on that?
I think the context is really important. So there are things that are obviously harmful and destructive, and then there are things that it depends on why people are doing it. So some people really, for instance, body modification. Some people do it just for the thing. Like some people get a bunch of tattoos because they love tattoos. Some people get a bunch of piercings because they love piercings. Some people do it as a way to experience harm. And so I know we're talking about suicidality, but some people slowly do things that are more and more self-destructive, not for the purpose of doing those things, even though as a side effect, they may be self-destructive. But because they don't really want to live and they're not willing to take as active as immediate a role in taking their life. Whereas some people are doing things that are risky and self-destructive for the purpose of doing those things, like driving recklessly or being reckless with sexual activities or, sorry, crazy puppy, or just generally being reckless with their lives. I think there's a difference in context and why people are doing it and what's going on with them.
Okay, before we get into question number 4, which is our last question,
Did you want?
Oh yes, Heather.
Just to speak to that really quick. That's why I advocate having a psychologist, is because I liken this question that you just proposed to all of us to, if I was battling cancer and I had an oncologist, and all of a sudden I noticed another lump, or I noticed, excessive fatigue. I can't make the call on that. I'm not the expert in the field. So I would go to my oncologist and say, hey, I just did this. What do you think? And so, I use that when I go and speak, to people to say, if you have an ailment in the mind, stay close to the doctor for your mind. So like, if there's any kind of manic, nutty, kooky things I'm doing, I let my psychologist know, yo, here's what I did. Tell me what's up, and I trust her.
Okay, so this time, for real, let's go to that Twitter chat. Vanessa, hey, how you doing? Thank you for sticking in there on Facebook. I appreciate you. Hashtag medicated and mighty. So let's, we got anything? This thing takes forever to reload. Okay, so Marnie says, hello, Marnie, or Dr. Amsulem. Sorry about that. I have heard this often too, both stigma and lack of awareness and understanding of what bipolar disorder is and how symptoms manifest are huge challenges for those affected. Anya, in response to question number 3, I think classic depression features a lot of suicidal thinking, hopelessness, but people may lack energy euphoric mania, they lack energy to act upon it. I don't think classic euphoric mania has suicidality, but that mixed states episodes do. Mixed states can make someone more likely to attempt hashtag SPSM. See when anyone else. Thank you, Marnie, for joining us. I don't know if this is your first time joining us. If so, welcome. You came to the right place. We're going to take a break for the next few weeks. We'll be back the first Sunday of January. I'll talk more about that at the end. So, Marty says, thanks for the welcome. Ran out of the room about the link to navigating relationships and bipolar disorder is. Oh, okay. So we'll retweet that if we haven't already. Thank you for sharing that. Let me heart that while I'm at it. There we go. So Marty says the link to I wrote it with the input of over 1,000 individuals who have been directly touched by bipolar disorder, either personally affected or their loved one is. Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely check that out and let you know what I think of it.
Me too.
Okay, so I think we're all caught up. Please feel free to keep tweeting, keep commenting on Facebook, on YouTube, and Mixer, because we want you to be part of the conversation. If you're watching this later on in the night, later on in the day, later on in the decade, or next decade, that's totally fine. And I don't want to hear it about people saying the decade starts at 2021, okay? That is a bag of lies, and you know it. So question number 4. How can we, as a society, make the world more accommodating for people with bipolar?
Oh,
there we go.
Okay.
Why not?
Got it. On the last question, I finally figure out the flow here.
We keep you on your toes.
Yeah. How can we as a society make the world more accommodating for people with bipolar? I honestly don't even know how to answer that one, because I am the bipolar, and sometimes the cheese has had to stand alone. It doesn't run in my family. It doesn't run in the pastors and the pastors' wives that I run around with. It doesn't run in my own family with my husband and kids. So I've just learned, honestly, you guys, to just keep going with or without the support of society. I just want to win, and I want to make it. And between me and God, that's what I'm going to keep doing. So that, I don't know. Does that?
Well, if I can speak your language, Heather, and again, this is not a religious show or anything of that stretch of the imagination, but the old teaching, everyone has a cross to bear. And for me, that is bipolar. And I don't like to come across as glamorizing it. It certainly is not glamorous. I don't see it as a gift or a superpower or anything like that. But it is an adversity. It is similar if someone is in a wheelchair, or someone cannot see. You don't tell them like, oh, like, don't you wish you can get off that wheelchair, or don't worry about it, you'll see someday. We learn to accommodate. We learn to create accessibility, and I personally feel like I don't think we need a ticker, but for me personally, I feel like if we had more understanding, more accessibility, more accommodations for people who are bipolar, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. Maybe we wouldn't want to kill ourselves. That doesn't mean it solves all of life's problems, because guess what? Life sucks most of the time for everyone, and everyone's got their something. Everyone's got their cross to bear. Everyone's got their adversity. This is one of them, and I'm totally fine with that. What say you, Danielle Glick, Dr. Glick, if I do?
2021 is when I shall be starting the Dr. Glick. How can we make society more accommodating? psychoeducation. I think that we all need to educate ourselves more so that we could kind of slow down the stigma. I unfortunately don't think we're ever going to be able to completely remove stigma away from mental illness just because there are people who are ignorant and insensitive. And unfortunately, the world does not have as big of a heart as I do. Um, but I do think that it's really important to educate. Whether that means sitting down and having a conversation with our loved ones who may not be properly supporting us, going online and reading something. I know that for me, this whole venture into the mental health field started by being in love with someone who is bipolar. And I asked, some questions, and this person was very, very shocked. Like, why do you care? Don't you think I'm crazy? You're just going to leave me anyway. And it kind of made me love them even more because there was just a little something extra. And it really it brought me from point A to where I am today due to the fact that I just wanted to learn. And I have found that with the families that I've worked with people when I was working inpatient in the psychiatric hospital, when they read up and were able to communicate what they were feeling, perhaps in a different way than they had tried before, you saw a lot more of people coming together. And to tie it into suicidality, I mean, up to what, 20% of completed suicides are people diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I think, or maybe like a little less than that. So I think we just need to be more sensitive and stop judging. And as I said in the beginning, it's something you have. It doesn't necessarily have to define you unless you want it to define you. So it just goes to compassion, to acceptance. Not to be this person, but bipolar lives matter. I think every life matters, and I don't see any difference between myself and somebody who's bipolar or schizophrenic. At the end of the day, we're all people, and we all need love and respect.
So why do you have such a big heart, Danielle? I feel like I'm heartless compared to you.
Because I have lived through a ton of very severe trauma, and I never want a person to ever feel as alone as I felt through some of the experiences that I have been through, which is losing a boyfriend to suicide, which is having my best friend attempt suicide several times in front of my face. At the core of it, the things that were relayed to me was how alone these people felt, and it was something that I could relate to with my own experiences. And if this is the only contribution that I can give to the world, then that's what I'm going to do. But it makes me feel better, and it helps me heal when I can help other people heal by listening, by providing coping skills. I don't know. I don't know where this heart came from, because honestly, I do feel dead inside most of the time.
Oh, Joelle?
Sorry, can I see the question again? It just helps. How can we as a society make the world more accommodating for people with bipolar? I definitely agree on the, she said I don't think she said psychotherapy. I think she said, I can't remember what it is. Oh, psychoeducation. Psychoeducation. Yeah, that's what I was going for. I definitely think that's always been helpful for me. And I think it really is helpful for people to some extent who want it, because it gives you a chance to, sorry, the puppy's distracting. One second. Okay. It gives you a chance to have power over what is happening to you to a certain extent. You can identify things that are going on for you a little better. You can give it a label, and you can work with that for yourself. And you can kind of assign mechanisms to what you're doing and how you're responding to your environment and how people are responding to you. And is that helpful for me? I don't know. Is this a great way to cope? I'm not sure. But also I do think that, in general, giving people a chance to be emotionally well, to be emotionally educated, to practice that emotional education just in general. And also, being aware that bipolar can affect your cognition and giving people ways to strengthen that, because it's just it does incredibly affect your cognition at times, and it can affect your memory. And I think that in turn affects coping mechanisms and how we can maneuver and manage moods.
Okay, so before we get into final thoughts.
Rudy.
Oh, did we not go to you yet?
No, we did. Am I allowed to have a second thought?
Oh yes, by all means. You are this week's expert guest. So
Oh,
yes, you
wow.
get third, fourth thoughts.
No,
Go for it.
I can't listen to myself that long. But, one thing that I've been challenged by is sometimes I make visitations or I go and speak at places where people that are bipolar don't have a society. If there's somebody in isolation in a psych ward, or the women I speak to in the prison who get put in solitary confinement, they don't have a society to accommodate them. And so I've had to really stretch myself and say, what do I say to them? And so I think that I just wanted to circle back around to what I said earlier, is that sometimes I've had to, and some of these other people, I've had to encourage them to encourage yourself, to speak to yourself when you don't have a society that can accommodate you with what your struggles are in your mind.
I love that. And that's me being sincere. Thank you for that, Heather. Before we get into final thoughts, let's see if we have any more comments before we wrap things up. Danielle says, "Love you, babe," and I guarantee you that is directed towards Heather. So awesome.
Really?
Yes. Absolutely. Kevik says no support asked for people with bipolar because we are supposed to tough it out. Unfortunately, that is the case most of the time. And I appreciate all your comments. I'm sorry if I missed any because I know you had a lot of good ones. Yes, you also talked about risky behavior versus unusual versus harmful. Those are all worth talking about. And I know oftentimes the 4 questions that I ask for every show, they're very broad, and we don't always have the opportunity to get really into the weeds and get really, really nuanced. So if we had a 3-4 hour show, that would probably happen, but you probably would not watch. So, but you had some more comments earlier. People have personality versus pathologizing as it as symptoms, mental illness as excuse, issues of capacity, accountability. Yes, all important issues, Kevix. Is there room for trauma and how it creates or intersects with bipolarity? Absolutely. I believe that. But yeah, we have a lot of work still to do in our society. Some people consider it an illness, a brain disease, something to be cured if possible. And Rosie, I wanted to get to her question because it was geared towards you, Heather. Heather, how did you follow up treatment after your suicide attempt in South Florida 20 years ago? Were you released after the mandatory 72-hour Baker Act? I would assume so because you're here right now, but I'll let you answer.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. Great question, Rosie. Thank you for asking it. When I was discharged from the psychiatric ward, the state said you need to be turned over to a state appointed psychologist. And so that was the beginning of learning what I have and learning to treat what I have. And so for the last 20 years, I have stayed close to my therapy sessions and the medication. Right now, I don't know, do you guys all want to know what I'm taking? Trileptal. Yeah!
Awesome. So let's take one less gander at the Twitter chat and see what we have. Any more comments. I really want to check out your it's Marnie Amelson, PhD. I will. Hopefully, I got that right. I definitely want to learn more about your work. So let's stay in touch. Maybe we can have you on. See, the thing is that this week's topic is bipolar and suicide, but obviously we can't just do blank diagnosis and suicide forever. So that's one of my goals going into 2020 is to get more nuanced with our topics. So that'll allow us to get more into the weeds, if you will, and have more engaging content geared up, ready to go for all of you. So bring into 2020 all that you would like to bring forward with you into the new year and decade, but I definitely recommend bringing in a healthy dose of self-compassion as well as compassion for others. Ooh, beautifully said. We don't deserve you, doctor. So that might be it for, I know it's holiday season, people were out shopping, doing that last minute shopping. I just got my last gift for Joelle actually the other day, and it is quite the thing. Let me tell you that. That's all I'm going to say. So Katie says, allow people. allow people space to pause and manage mood states without judgment. She also says, don't jump to dismiss opinions of people with bipolar disorder as just manic. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I think we got all that. Thank you all. I award you, Dr. Amsalem, the award of MVP for SPSM Chat this week. So congrats. You'll get your money in the mail. So let's get on to final thought. There is no money. I was just kidding. Final thoughts. Let's go with you. Let's go with you, Heather, last, because I like to end with the guests, unless we're having a piggy update. We have no piggy update, sadly.
What about the Aaron Carter update?
If you'll allow me to, let's go to Danielle Glick, coming from Connecticut, with an Aaron Carter special update. Where's the banner?
The Aaron Carter update. I finally got to meet Aaron Carter. I am not his therapist, but he may be bipolar too. And that is your Aaron. Oh, and we're not dating, contrary to what everybody thinks. So there is your Aaron Carter update.
But does he want to date you?
I think he has a new girlfriend, because there's been some chick in all of his lives, and she's really pretty, and she seems to be like stabilizing and a positive, person for him. So,
I mean, like, do you think that you're better than her?
Oh, God.
I mean, I don't know her to say that, but like, he's also not my type.
You can get matching face tattoos.
I want to get a tattoo right here of Medusa also, but I think all of you guys would not really respect me for doing that, and I'm not sure it would be very professional.
Well, can we do it on a live stream? Because that's what we need to do. We need to do stunts for viewership. We need to get people talking.
Let's do it. I'll get Dr. Glick tattooed right over here.
Joelle, final thoughts.
Sorry, there's mute, unmute. Final thoughts. So I think that, the concept, the experience, and the label of bipolar is actually really, really complicated. I think that there are a lot of people who are labeled bipolar who, if we dug a little deeper and looked into their experiences, both internal and external, maybe that wouldn't fit, and maybe they could get better treatment and support that would maybe not make them feel like they have to escape by taking their life. And I think that we need to entertain those ideas a lot more. And that would be a way better way of supporting people. I also think that we need to stop dismissing people who do have extreme mood experiences, who do have extreme distress in terms of their treatment and what kind of support they need. And we need to really look at when we're taking away people's rights and cutting them off from their house and their life, supposedly to help them. Are we doing that because what they're doing and how they're processing what they're experiencing is making us uncomfortable, or because they're actually a risk? And I think so many times it's because of the former, and that actually leads to suicidal issues. So all of those problems.
Final thoughts, Anime?
Can I just throw something out there real quick too, based off of what Joelle just said?
Sure.
I think that clinicians can do better as well. I have seen a lot of misdiagnoses between borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder, and I think that impacts treatment and medication. So I think that is a fault of our own, is that some of us clinicians need to do better and be better versed on what bipolar actually looks like versus borderline. So I think it would be interesting to have someone on the show further down who's specializes in personality disorders, because they're a very high risk population as well, and a lot of their behaviors, self-harm is very common in personality disorders, and so it would be interesting to have this versus that.
Well, we did have Ursula Whiteside on. You didn't want to be there, so whatever.
That was just because for a hot minute I had beef with DBT, but now I decided, because of that episode, that I'm going to get certified in DBT. So she actually changed my mind because of her.
Yay!
So
So are you saying you're DTF with DBT now?
I'm DTF with DBT. What's up?
You down
heard
with
it here first.
DBT? Yeah, you know me.
Final thoughts, Heather Funk Palacios. The floor is yours. Also, take this time to talk about any projects you got going on, any words of wisdom you want to impart to people who are maybe optimistic or maybe pessimistic about the coming new year.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say it's very honored to be in this quad with the three of you. I know I feel like I got accepted into the cool kids club, which would have been more helpful in middle school, but I'll take it now. So thank you guys. Thank you. And I since you've allowed me to have a final thought, I actually would like to ask permission to give my final thought to anybody listening that's struggling right now.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I just want to say to you, if you're listening and you are struggling with wanting to give up, that I just want you to know that you are very fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you're the only one of you, and that if you or I would take ourselves out of the human race, we would leave a void that could never be replaced. That's how valuable you are to humanity. Is we can't go and find another backup of you on eBay, on Amazon, at Target, at the thrift store. You're it. And so you and I have to keep living and being the only one of us, because nobody else can do it. So I just wanted to say that.
You just hit me right in the heart.
Yeah, we picked the right person to end the year on. So thank you so much, Heather. And just so you all know, Heather is also a public speaker. So if you want to book her to speak at your organization, what's the best way people can connect with you?
They can do @OneHerFull. That's with an H on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can show up at my house.
I'm gonna follow the shit out of you on social
I will.
media.
I will take you up on that offer.
She does follow the shit out of people.
Follow the shit out of everyone.
So that's going to do it. I know we're running in overtime, but it is the end of the year. And so I want to make sure to give a special thank you to everyone who has supported us. I mean, little peek behind the curtain. This was only supposed to be like, we're only supposed to go until October at first. And here we are in December. I feel like this is our show now. I don't feel like we're the side crew or the B team or anything like that. This is our show. Me, Joelle, Danielle, Hudson, Marie, even Krista, who's making us all look good. Every guest that we have on here, everyone who's tweeting, who's moderating the tweet chat. Michelle, I appreciate you. Everyone who's commented on Facebook.com/SPSM Chat. Everyone on YouTube.com/SPSM Chat. Our new followers on Mixer.com/SPSM Chat. And of course, our home base, Twitter.com/SPSM Chat. I mean, I can't thank you all enough. When we first started this, and I think you'll know about this, Danielle and Joelle, we were a hot mess, and we still struggle every now and then, but I can't say enough good things about this experience. This has really, really made my Sunday night every night. I look forward to this more than anything else most of the time. So thank you again. I can't say enough good things about every single one of you who was watching, who has shown their support, who is part of this. I was going to say this is my brain. the SPSM Chat, Universe, Galaxy, Solars, whatever. Thank you so much. I will see you all in 2020, January. Is this January 5th, I believe? Let's just say that. What the, oh, the fucking, we have a graphic. Sorry, sorry, my language. January 5th, the whole thing was scrolling below me. I'm like, when do we return? January 5th. We don't have a guest lined up. We will soon. So, but feel free. Our DMs are open at SPSM Chat. If you want to be a guest on this show, if you want to suggest a topic, by all means, slide into our DMs. We appreciate all of you. So before I ruin this experience like I've ruined everything else in life, let's
make everything better, Rudy.
Let's sign off. Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you. I hope to see you in person sometime soon.
Like a week or two, right, guys? Ish?
Maybe.
I will drive to New Jersey for you. Just saying.
Thank you.
I love you guys.
Thank you. Until then, until January 5th, 2020. The future. Ooh.
Cars.
Hold your piggies close.